Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Female Factors Limitless Mentoring Conference online. Thank you. We are so excited to have you all with us here today. And welcome in particular to our How to Navigate a Career Change Q&A panel with our wonderful, wonderful speakers today. We have 𝗂𝗍, who is a travel blogger, writer, and slow travel expert. And then we're also joined by Pooja, who is a Chief Marketing Officer at 𝗵𝗵𝗆, which is a startup incubator. And she's our marketing extraordinaire as well. So just to kind of get things started, a few housekeeping issues. As we mentioned in the first session, our main session, these sessions are all recorded. Be camera ready in case you want to pop in and ask a question. And we really want this to be really interactive. So we want it to almost be like we're having a conversation in a room together. So don't be afraid to speak up, ask questions. We really want to have a nice flow going today. Any technical troubles, reach out to our conference lead, 𝗿𝗵𝗆. You can just write to her in Hopin. Most important, we will be using Slido a lot throughout this whole day, including for this session. So if you're not familiar with it, go to sli.do. Our code is the female factor and hop over there. So I'm just going to kick off by kind of running you through how these sessions will work today. So after this kind of introductory session, I'll kind of run through how we're going to use Slido. And then I will let Pooja and 𝗂𝗍 introduce themselves and tell you a bit more about their journey and what they're currently doing now. We'll be asking you guys quite a few questions as we go along. So we're going to be making use of these polls. And then we're going to throw it over to Slido. And so Slido is our wonderful tool where you can submit all the questions you ever wanted to ask of our experts and how they've navigated their various career changes. We will be asking our poll questions through there as well. So that's how we will be asking all our questions today. So yeah, and then we'll continue on for a couple of minutes asking your questions that you submit. And then in the last 10 minutes or so, we're going to throw the floor open and you can just pop in, turn your camera on and ask a question. So with that said, I'm going to stop my screen share and throw it over to 𝗂𝗍. 𝗂𝗍, can you please introduce yourself to our wonderful participants today?
Sure thing. Hi guys, my name is 𝗂𝗍 and my hair is curly, so it's very easy to remember if you get confused. I am a slow travel advocate and travel blogger. I'm clearly Australian. I've been living in Vienna since 2012. And currently I'm self-employed working as a mentor and consultant for creative entrepreneurs and small travel businesses who are basically looking to navigate all of the challenges of digital life online, building a business, and managing a scaling team. So I've had my fingers in a few different pies, being an expat and a travel blogger, and for the last 6 years, I was on the executive team at 𝗺𝗿𝗄𝗄, which is one of Austria's #1 travel startups. I was managing a global team of 75+ people, and I was lucky enough to be with the company as they went through massive hypergrowth. So lots and lots of lessons from all of those different experiences, and I'm super looking forward to sharing that and hearing stories from you guys today.
Thank you, 𝗂𝗍. Really, really great experience. I'm really excited to hear all your stories from the travel industry as well. So Pooja, can you please introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, guys. So I'm in here with 2 Australians today. That's really cool. How does that happen? Yeah, so hi, everyone. My name is Pooja. I'm the CMO at 𝗵𝗵𝗆 here in Vienna. I've been with the company for 3 years. I started working as a growth hacker and the CMO since about 1 year, a bit more than a year. Have a bit of a different background. So I was doing project management before for Sony and Universal. So I have a media and music background. I did that for 5 years in Salzburg, in London, and in Vienna. Yeah, I studied in London, so I spent 4 years there. I did my bachelor degree and a master's degree from there. and I am in Vienna since 5 years. I'm also happy to share some of my experiences with you, but I'm also really looking forward to hearing what you guys are up to and what your questions are.
Great, thank you, Pooja. Now, everyone, if we could pop over to Slido, we're really interested to know where you're all coming from, so joining us from today. So if you head all over to Slido and just pop in, where are you joining us from? I'm curious. I know you've got 2 Australians here, 2 Australians based in Vienna, and we have Pooja who's Austrian. So where are you all joining us from? We're all in Vienna at the moment. Pop it in Slido, we want to know. And I'll share with you all where you're all from. Just a second. There you go, pop it in. Oh my goodness. Got people joining us from London. Hello, London.
Hello, London.
Brazil.
Ooh.
Hi, Brazil. Warsaw.
Barcelona.
Barcelona. Wow, this is really, really great. Oh, we have someone from Ecuador. Wow, we were really global together. So this is going to be really, really great to hear all your experiences, particularly when moving from different countries. I know both Pooja and 𝗂𝗏 had made the big move, so I think everyone here will be interested to hear how that has worked out for you both. All right, this is great. This is great. This is amazing, everyone. Okay, so Pooja, 𝗂𝗏, you got a good idea of where we've got our speakers from today? Oh yes, we have people joining us from Miami, other parts of rural Austria, Turkey. Oh my goodness, this is great. This is really great. I love how global we are today. Well, thank you everyone for sharing that. I have one more little question I kind of want to ask you all. I want to know why you have joined us today. So hop across the Slido. We're just kind of asking that question as well. Why are you joining us here? What do you want to know from 𝗂𝗏 and Pooja?
The suspense.
The suspense. Ooh, I like seeing the bars change. Ooh, we've got a lot of career change planners, ladies. This could be this is great. Okay, so we keep going. A few more seconds to enter your options. Okay, it's great. So we've got a good balance. Mainly people planning a career change. So lots of advice maybe about how to make the call to change your career or change your location. Some are facing a career change, whether that's by choice or not, and quite a few who are just curious as to what you have to say, which is great to know as well. Okay, guys, thank you for that. This is really, really great to see everyone's expectations and kind of what they want to hear from you guys. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pop across the Slido. So if you haven't already, you're all in there now. That's great. So now's a great time to start answering your questions. You can upvote your questions. If someone's already had the same idea as you, go ahead. This is and we will start kind of drawing questions from there. So I'm going to throw it over to 𝗂𝗏. 𝗂𝗏 first, I think, because you're top of my screen at the moment. With your career change, having moved from Australia, moving from working in a company to being a small business, independent business owner, working for yourself, that's the word I want to say. What is the #1 challenge? If you can just give us one, what was the #1 challenge?
I mean, I'm not allowed to say Corona, right? Like that's a total cop out of an answer.
Too easy. That's going to be the default answer for everyone.
No, I think for me, the biggest thing is I've, like most of us, I've grown up and always worked in an environment, whether it was school or university or in corporate and startup environments, where I've had someone I'm accountable to, and I've had someone else sitting on my shoulder saying, well, it's a deadline and where is it? And now that I'm self-employed, I have to be that disciplined with myself. So I think, we could go into the psychology of this a little bit, but I know personally, I'm very good at putting my own needs at the bottom of lists or lower down lists, whereas now my business needs are dependent on me putting those priorities first. So that has been a huge mindset change, but it's also incredibly freeing once you kind of wrap your head around it.
Cool, good to know. Good to know. Pooja, what's your number one challenge having changed careers to more of this CMO, growth hacking and marketing type role?
So my biggest challenge when I moved from project management to growth hacking, after having worked in various different companies for 5-6 years, was to then start again as a junior. I was kind of categorized as a junior because I didn't have all the hard skills that were required to be a growth hacker. For everyone who's not familiar with the term growth hacking, so growth hacking basically means digital marketing that is data driven. So the aspect of analytics and measuring things is quite important here. So I had some know-how in the field of marketing, but I didn't have the hard skills that were required to actually really do hands-on growth hacking for various different clients. So for me, that was the biggest challenge. But also the most fun thing about it, to really kind of, accept the fact that, okay, I'm going to start doing this. I have all these work experience. It's not going to be wasted because I still have skills I can apply. That was a bit of time that it took me a bit of time to understand that. But then to really get into these online tutorials and really watch all these things on YouTube and do all these online courses, that was a lot of hard work, but it was fun.
So yeah, so you made the most of resources to try and get those hard skills up where you felt you were lacking.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a good point to know. And this, bear in mind, I'm going to throw us over to Slido again because I want to know, or we all want to know, what are your number one challenges in making this career change at the moment? So head across, and then we can, we've heard Carly's challenge of being accountable to herself and having to set her own deadlines, and then Pooja's skill of having challenges of taking the step back and having to learn those hard skills. So yeah, what are your current challenges? I'm going to share my screen and hopefully we can see. Yeah, okay. Not knowing where to start. Oh, isn't that the case for everything? Not knowing where to start sometimes.
Having the right connection. Okay.
That. Okay. Yeah, acquiring the right skills, and you've already mentioned that, Pooja. Having to take a step back, yes. Concerns about finances, the right connections, administrative legal visa issues. I'm sure Carly can speak to that a bit more about how that all goes down.
I don't know that we've got time to talk about it.
We're going to have a whole session on that, I'm sure, how to navigate applying for visas when you move countries. Absolutely. Okay, so kind of based on this, we're seeing a lot of people kind of just not knowing where to start. So I'm going to kind of throw that back to you guys. How did you know that it was the right time to change your career trajectory, and how did you start? How did you start making that change? Pooja, I'm going to go with you first.
So it was definitely a process. It took me a while to understand why I wasn't happy at my job then. I knew that something was missing, and when I started looking for other jobs, I kind of realized that the digital space that was really interesting for me required a lot of skills that I didn't have. So I kind of, my first reaction was just like, oh, okay, I can't do it because I don't have the right skills. But then I think I took around 3-4 months to really look into other jobs, and I was just kind of going through what's out there to understand the market better. And I was at a point in my life where I could have really, gone into any different direction. I could have moved away. I could have completely changed industries, changed my job. So there were a lot of options, which is really cool, but it made it quite difficult. So I really had to understand first what was the one thing that I was missing, and why I wasn't fulfilled. So for me, the process started then, and then soon I realized, okay, it really is the fact that I'm feeling I'm not developing myself anymore. I'm not learning any new skills. I feel very comfortable. I have a cool job. I have like a lot of nice people around me. So a lot of things were really good. But this one thing, that feeling, okay, I'm not learning anything anymore, was just really not making me happy. So that's when I really understood, okay, I needed to develop other skills. And in my research, I found out the skills that I needed were digital marketing skills. And then I kind of started going from there.
Okay, so you kind of really focused on why you were unhappy and then focused on kind of where you would like to go next, and then started researching how to get there.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Good. Yeah, good to know. Good step by step, breaking it down, making it simple and kind of achievable. Yeah, really, really good advice. 𝗂𝗏, how did you know where to start? How did you figure out that you needed a change?
I mean, my first disclaimer statement is there is never going to be a big green light, a big Hail Mary moment or a shining light that says, this is the time to start. This is the way to do it. I think in any major life change, you kind of just have to go through it and dive in. But similar to what 𝗠𝗄𝗃 was saying, I had that tickling at the back of my head where I was on paper very successful. I was leading teams. I loved my team. I loved what I was doing. The company was growing. It was a very dynamic environment, and I was super proud of what I'd achieved. But I knew in the back of my head it wasn't my forever career. It wasn't what I forever wanted to be doing. And that was the start for me. Similarly, researching what I maybe wanted to be doing instead, but also having a little playground, like sandbox on the side, outside of my job role. I would come home. I started my travel blog back in ancient times in 2012. And I always had that on the side. I kept that going the whole time that I was working insane hours every week, because that was where I could play. I could learn about social media marketing. I could play with blogging and understanding different platforms and apply a lot of the stuff that I was learning in my full-time role to the blog. So it was very, a lot of crossover, but that gave me the confidence to know that I could do it and start to make step towards making a change. And I think the other factor is also knowing your own risk boundaries, upper and lower limits of risk, because it's, you can have the idea that I need to make a career change. Most people don't have the capacity, whether that be financial, emotional, or mental, to say, all right, I'm doing it tomorrow. You need to build an environment, whether that's building up your skills base, building out your network, lining up the next available role, or whatever it may be to meet your risk needs. And that could also be your partner's needs, your family's needs. So I think we need to acknowledge those kind of outside influences as well. But basically, short answer, play and do minimum viable products on the side where you can be testing out the idea.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea to have your little side hustle first, and then realize if this is something you really love and you actually want to make the change to be your full-time hustle, if for want of a better phrase. Okay, yeah, really, really great insights, ladies. That's really good. Now I think we're going to head over to our questions and what everyone started submitting. Really, really great question from Valeria, who wants to know how to manage switching to an unrelated industry. So do you guys have any advice on that?
So I think 𝗂𝗏 kind of mentioned something that made me also think about my side hustle that I had at that point. So that was, for me, Austrian Startups. It's an organization in Austria where they are always looking for volunteers. And for me, that was kind of the step away from the corporate world. Well, not entirely step away, but like an additional step, a side step. So while I was still working for Universal Music with my full-time position, and I had this little itch as well, I started volunteering at Austrian Startups, and that's how I started growing my network there. And I kind of got familiar with terms like growth hacking, and I got into all these, the startup lingo, and that was really helpful. So that's how I got to know not an industry as such, but kind of the entire ecosystem. So yeah, volunteering is my tip for that.
Yeah, I would agree to that, to try and find the opportunities outside the strict definitions of your role. I think from what I saw of the question, they're looking to go into education. And along the similar lines, if you can find a way to do a small project, even within your company, to prove either your proficiency or to prove the value of your idea to your team or to your boss, you know, do an after hours education session on a topic that you're passionate about, or hold a breakfast meeting where you do a little education session for your team, even just your direct team. I think if you, again, can play a little bit and do a pilot project, this is a really good opportunity to turn around and say, I've had this idea, I'm really passionate, display your skills, you know, set some KPIs so that you know what success means. And then once you've tried it, you can turn around to either your senior management person or to the other industry that you're looking to change into and say, look, I was in this role, but here's some examples of what I've been doing in that direction. So kind of creating your own opportunities.
Great advice, both of you. So I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-ups, feel free to pop them in Slido. Moving forward, and this is a really great question, how to make your career change believable to your potential new boss, if that includes reducing working hours where you're working full-time. So I think this question is more about, okay, so you want to say focus on your side hustle a little bit more. How do you kind of navigate that with your boss? But also on the other hand, I'd like to hear how you would, any advice on trying to convince maybe a new boss, if you're going for, if you're changing your industry, and you're interviewing, how do you convince them that whilst your previous experience is in a different field, how you can still apply it to this new field? So that's kind of two questions. I'm sorry. Pooja, sorry.
Okay, so two questions. The first one was, how do you negotiate the extra hustle, the side hustle with your boss? So in my case, I was quite open about it. I didn't really ask, to be honest. I just thought, you know, so within the company, I had the role of being the person who was responsible for working on startup relations. So basically, startups who were doing something in the field of music, I was supposed to keep an eye on them, and they would pitch, and then maybe if it was interesting, I would kind of like do an intro to the people inside the company. So startup, the word startup was kind of like my thing within the whole company. No one else kind of was looking into any startups. And then I kind of, you know, I really used that. And I said, okay, if I want to be able to understand whether or not the person on the other side of the table is really pitching me something meaningful, and if it has potential, I have to understand the entire ecosystem better. And therefore, I will be volunteering at this Austin Startups organization in my own time, though. So I kind of didn't do it during my working hours. I spend the time after work, on weekends. So during that time, yeah, you have to just make extra time for it, I think. I mean, at least in my case. But my boss at the time was quite positive and said, well, yeah, sure. I mean, none of us are looking into that, and it's important to keep your eyes open. So please go ahead and do it. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. That was the first question answered.
Yeah. Well, Carly, do you have anything to say about convincing your boss to kind of allow you to spend maybe a bit more time on your side hustle?
So the short answer is, in any negotiation, whether it's for higher salary or anything else, I always try to come at it from, what if I was sitting on the other side of the table? What would I want to hear as the boss? And how can I make it valuable to them? So rather than coming in with the mindset of like, oh, hopefully I can convince him that maybe I could work less hours, it's, okay, here's the value that I'm already delivering. Here's where I'm already, you know, hitting my targets 3 times over or whatever it is. And here's the project that I want to do. And here's what I project the value will be to the business. So I guess the mindset shift is kind of, how can you make them not say no to this? Rather than convincing them into the idea, make it so that it's clear and evident to them the value of the shift that you're going to make. And to be honest, like when I negotiated down, in my last 12 months or so at Curator, I went from, you know, stupid amount of hours a week to reduced hours per week. And I made sure that those reduced hours, I was still overachieving my targets, overachieving my work, and proving and documenting, most importantly, all of the work that I was doing in those reduced hours. And again, if you bring it back down to, well, let's just do that as a pilot program. Let's try this for a month. If we're all uncomfortable with it, we wheel it back and set clear expectations and goals and measures and document the shit out of it. And that way, then it's self-evident on paper, and it takes the personal side out of it. So it's not like me as Carly going, oh God, please, I hope you want this because I'm a really good person. It becomes a business proposition, and that is so much easier to negotiate than please like me.
Yeah. And it's really, really good to kind of document it, offer it as a trial kind of time. Yes, really, be clinical about it, not begging and whining and hoping that it's going to end your way. No, they're really, really good points to come at it strongly with a clear idea and things like that. So moving back to kind of like the interview side. So you want to change, you're in the job interview, you've landed the job interview in your kind of new career field. How do you convince the new boss, the new hiring boss, that your previous experience is useful and that they should take you on with your with your kind of lack of experience in that particular field? Carly, do you want to have a stab at that?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, it's if you do your homework before the interview, find out where there's the synchronicity between what you were doing and what the current company is trying to do or achieve, or what the role is defined as. They often give away like little cheat code hints in all of the job descriptions. And if you can align that, if you can show that you've done your homework and say, okay, the role title was different, my responsibilities were different, but here are the consistent skills or the consistent techniques that I have that I can bring to this role with a fresh perspective. Because if they're hiring someone new, it actually means that they need an outside perspective. They don't want the guys who have been there for 5 years having input on this project. They need a fresh set of eyes. They need a fresh perspective. And again, if you're going in there with confidence and asking questions, then I think it's much more about selling yourself in that role as an outside perspective, willing to learn, than it is, you know, hoping that they're going to match you with the role. I always had the attitude when I was hiring of like, I can teach you skills. I can teach you about the product. I can't like teach people to have a brain or think for themselves. Like that's the sort of stuff that you're kind of looking for with hiring.
Yeah, good points. Pooja, any thoughts?
Exactly that. So I remember in my interview, I went in there and I said, I have the ability to learn things. So I know I can't learn, like I don't know it now, but I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that I would fail if I tried really hard. You know, if I really like put in a lot of effort in the first 2 weeks, did all these tutorials and courses, and with your great help, I'm sure I can really push through. Like you have that feeling that they're really, you know, empowered to teach you something that works well. And I mean, in the end of the day, that's exactly what it was. I brought in the experience that I had from the industry that they didn't have. So I said, okay, if you ever have clients in the media or music industry, I can help out with that. I have project management experience. The company was quite new at that time, quite in the earlier stage. So project management was something that they hadn't focused on too much. So there's always going to be skills that you already have if you have work experience that the other company might not have, because if it's a career change, then you're probably, you know, not their typical candidate. So definitely, like, you know, be happy with what you did and sell that as well. And then just show that you're going to learn the rest.
Great advice. I hope this answers everyone's questions about, how to kind of approach those interviews and, convincing people that you are ready for your industry change. Just having a look at Slido now. What have we got next? Question about transitioning from consulting to a full-time in-house position. This, again, I'll fair enough if you guys don't have the experience in this kind of thing, but the question is how to transition. sorry, I lost the question. How to transition to consulting on a freelance basis from a full-time in-house position? What's the best approach to start on this path? So 𝗂𝗏, you're kind of now a bit more on the freelance side of things. So would you have any advice from reversing that, how to go from back to a full-time kind of idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've been doing your job well, then you should, ideally the goal would be to get in full-time with a client that you already have, or with someone you've already been consulting, or a business where you understand the needs of the business. And my approach will kind of be to show, again, the value that you can deliver. Maybe if you're really cheeky, you can calculate out, well, these are my freelance fees, and if you just hired me full-time, might be cheaper for you. And just come to them with the idea and the proposition. You're going to know, if you're already working with them, you're going to know what their roadmap is, you're going to know what their priorities are. And if you can fill that gap, it is always easier to work with someone who understands the business, who can hit the ground running, than it is to start from scratch. Training someone up, I think, top of my head statistics, always takes like minimum 3 to 6 months, and it's almost 12 months until they're productive. So you are already ahead of the game if you've been freelancing for them, and getting back into a full-time role should just be you, again, matching your capabilities, your understanding of the business, asking the right qualifying questions, and making it so that you just meet that need.
Okay, great. Any thoughts, Pooja, or has 𝗂𝗏 kind of nailed it?
No, I think 𝗂𝗏, yeah, everything you said I agree with. Just also to add something, I feel like as consultants and freelancers, you have proven that you know how to work independently, and that's an amazing skill.
Yeah.
And you know, I wouldn't underestimate the fact that a lot of people don't have that skill to work independently, and I would really try to use that as well.
Great. Moving across, a really great question. What is the most effective way to overcome your fears and your doubts? Pooja, any thoughts?
Wow, okay. So I think you just always have to think about other people who are doing it and look at them and ask yourself, you know, if they can do it, why can't I do it? So that's kind of that's been my approach for some years now. Every time I go into a sales meeting or a negotiation, I feel like, okay, well, these guys can do it, you know, I'm pretty sure I can do it too. So kind of just tell yourself that you have it in you. You really have to speak to yourself. I speak to myself all the time before important meetings, and just know that, you know, whatever you're gonna say, you've thought about it, you know what you're doing, just believe in yourself. And when it comes to fear, we always have fear. I've always had fear as well. Whenever I changed or tried something new, I think, you know, also to have the mindset of what's the worst that can happen. Like if something doesn't work out, what's really the worst thing that can happen? You know, you could just change again, or you might fail once. So what? Big deal. You know, you move on. So don't like worry about failing or disappointing yourself, because most cases you'll be fine. And if you do fuck up once, then it's okay to just change again and try something else. So let's not take any of this too seriously is my advice.
Okay, 𝗂𝗏, any thoughts?
100%. Just as you were saying that, I had the thought, the more senior I got in my role, the more experience I got in startups, everyone is the Wizard of Oz. Everyone is the man behind the curtain pretending that they know what they're doing, but they're just figuring it out on the spot as well. So you can be that confident in yourself. No one has it figured out, and that's how we all learn and grow. And in terms of the fear and getting through it, I'm a very type A personality. I tend to plan and overthink things and try and control everything. And I think the only way through that sometimes is to push through it. And the best example or story I have of that was me learning to ski. My husband is, of course, an Austrian ski instructor. What a cliche. And I'm Australian and I can kind of ski, but not really. And when I follow him, like when I ski by myself down the mountain, I'm like gripping onto the sticks and thinking about everything and bending my knees and holding on tight. And then when I can follow him down a mountain, I can switch off my brain and I just glide through the snow so much more easily. And it was like the perfect encapsulated example of sometimes your own head and your own thinking can get in the way if you try and overthink and account for every circumstance and possibility of what could go wrong. Just go through.
Sound advice. We always need to, I hope everyone's taking a note of this, because I think we're all going to have to apply this to, just really stop, get out of your own head, tell yourself you are awesome. Great advice. Couldn't have put it better. Moving across, what else do we have now? Good question. Slight sidestep though. What do you do if you're feeling stuck at work and can't get things done? Particularly, how do you get unstuck if you're feeling blocked and unproductive? Pooja?
So that happens to me all the time. And I procrastinate. I tend to procrastinate as well. And so I've like kind of tried to learn some things that work for me. So usually when I feel stuck at work, like I know what I have to do, but I just can't do it for some reason, I write it all down and I kind of like break it down to smaller to-dos. So I know I have to, launch something new, then I would write like launch whatever, and then I would create like subtasks with a checklist that I can just check off. And that motivates me as well, because then this overwhelming thing that I need to do kind of becomes like smaller things I can just kind of get done with. And sometimes when I really feel completely stuck and there's no way around it, I take a break. Like, sometimes you just really can't force yourself. But usually when I have a deadline, I would just write down all these things and then go in and try to do it without thinking too much about it.
Good advice. Carly?
Yeah, I would agree. The things that I tend to get stuck on are those big, massive projects that I've had on my list for way too long, and I've built it up in my head, like, how do I possibly get through this? So breaking it down into tiny steps, 100%. If you need a bit of a mindset shift, something that worked well for me when I was kind of overwhelmed at work was making sure that the first thing I did every day was something for myself. So in my case, it was like getting up and journaling or writing, even if it was 6 a.m., which sounds insane, getting out of bed and making sure my first priority for the day was something that satisfied or fulfilled me, so that by the time I got into the office, I'd already achieved something for that day and I could go into the work headspace of like, okay, and now this is just the stuff that we need to do next. And my controversial addendum to that though is 𝗵𝗍𝗄𝗏 has the advice that there is no such thing as can't, there is just won't. If you replace the word won't in that sentence, then you can start to dig into, why am I not wanting to do this? Is this not aligned? Is this not moving us forward towards the goal? Or is there something deeper going on here? And you can kind of start to excavate that a little bit. It's a bit brutal to be like, I can't work through this. I won't work through this. Why won't you work through this? It's hardcore, but it can help you break through and maybe understand that what's blocking you is you're not being given the right parameters for the project. And then you can talk about that with the people that you're working with.
Yeah. Was that did you read a book about that in particular, Carly?
Yeah, 𝗵𝗍𝗄𝗏 has her book, Everything is Figure-Outable. And it's exactly that. Some of her, she's from Jersey and she's really like wordy and bouncy and very big in marketing circles. Yeah. But that just kind of unlocked a little part where you go, what's really going on here?
Excellent. If you have a moment, can you pop it in the chat for everyone to follow, so they can look it up if they're keen to know more about switching your mindset from can't to won't? That's a really interesting thought. I think that's going to be keeping me awake for the rest of the night.
It's not a judgment on people personally. It's definitely just a mindset shift.
Yeah, wow. It's a really, really good way to reframe your mind. Okay, I'm going to kind of ask maybe one more question from 𝗖𝗍𝗏 and then maybe throw it open to the floor. Okay, so what have we got here? How do you deal with showing people you have the skills but no fancy certification? Pooja, seeing as you've kind of had to deal with like specific hard skill development, how did you show what you had with or without a fancy qualification?
I kind of looked up which types of courses I would want to do beforehand. And I said, if I can, and if you give me the chance, I would do these courses. So I didn't have the certifications that I needed. But I had done my research. I had talked to other people who would know which courses would be relevant for me. And I kind of already went into this conversation saying, okay, I've looked it up. I know this, these 2 or 3 things would really help me move forward, and I want to do it. Can I do it? So that kind of, you're showing that you're willing to change the fact that you don't have certifications. And then the other person might just be like, oh, actually, no rush. Like, we can figure this out. But just to kind of show that you're willing to put it on paper that you want to learn something.
Okay, Carly.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
The flip side to that, I'm very much a fast and dirty startup child. For the last 6 years, it's been, learn by doing more than waiting to get a certification for something. So, for example, I do some freelance writing for Lonely Planet, which is like the dream, but I've never done a writing course. I don't have a piece of paper that tells me that I'm a writer, but I have companies that hire me to do that work. So I think we can sometimes put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I need to be qualified first. Women in particular, there's studies on this. Women in particular are very focused on getting the right qualifications first before they apply for a job. And I think men are at a rate of like, if they're 60% qualified for the job, they'll go for it. Whereas women is something like 80%. So a lot of the time, what you can do and what you can prove without a certification is equally valid if you've put in the work, if you can show effort and examples of the work itself and willingness to learn on the job, like we touched on before.
That's great point. So don't freak out too much about not having the hard piece of paper. Like if you've got the experience to back it up, or if you can do the research into what qualification you'd like to have, and yeah, show that you've done your research and you know what is necessary out there. Good point.
Sorry. Obviously, that's dependent on the category, because rocket scientists and stuff probably don't freestyle that.
Yeah, please don't.
Or like medicine, maybe.
Yeah, maybe surgeons.
Yeah, I totally played surgery a lot as a kid. I can totally apply for that MD job. Totally, that's how it works, right? Okay, I'm going to throw us back to Slido because I just kind of want to know whether we've covered a lot of our bases yet, or whether there's any particular area that our audience would like to kind of hear about a bit more. So I'm going to throw us back over to Slido and just kind of, if there's anything in particular you want to hear more about in these particular areas, if there's something not on that list, pop it in the chat or in Slido, and maybe we can kind of play around in the last 10 minutes of this session. And I will put us on present and share my screen.
I'm so into this Slido thing, just watching all the charts.
It's fun, yeah.
Like a live video game.
Okay. Oh, undoubtedly. Oh, we have tips and things to consider about a career change. It's pulling ahead. It's pulling ahead. Do we want more success stories? Okay. We're having a clear preference for more tips and things to consider in a career change. So I'm going to head back to our Slido and see if there's any particular questions related to tips and things to consider with career change before throwing up it open to our floor. Now, how do I stop sharing? Okay, so what do we have? Yeah. Yes, good question. Like particularly related to kind of when you've had to take like a side step or diagonal step with approaching a new industry. How do you convince your new industry, your new career people that you're not necessarily a junior despite you necessarily applying for that you do have all these years of experience, so you're not like you're fresh out of university kind of junior. Pooja, do you have any thoughts on kind of on that?
Yeah, age helps, firstly. No, but so in my case, I was, talking a lot about my previous experience when I started my new job, and people were well aware of what I had done before and why I was brought into that position. So it's not something that, I think it comes up naturally as well. When you talk to other people and they ask you what you have what you had done so far. And yeah, I never really felt like people were surprised that I got that position without having the experience. When I explained why I chose to change direction, and I had like my story figured out, and I made it sound like, and it was a conscious choice, it was a sidestep, and I wanted to do it. And I mean, and with that, some sacrifices came as well. So I think in general, when we talk about tips, the number one tip I can also give is be ready to know what you can sacrifice, because sometimes, not always, but in my case, I had to settle for less salary at that point. It was a company that wasn't as well established, so a few things, but I had to kind of be clear for myself what I was ready to sacrifice for short term in order to reach my long-term goals. So to keep the North Star, the long-term goal in front of you, and to think about how can I, through other ways, get to that ultimately. And yeah, so if you have your story sorted out in your head, I think people will totally accept that.
That's great. What about you, 𝗂𝗄𝗧?
Yeah, I would say, as we kind of mentioned, your CV and your LinkedIn profile, keyword the shit out of your LinkedIn profile so it can show not only what was your job title, but what did you achieve there? What were the results that you had in that role? I think that really speaks to your experience. And to be honest, as an immigrant, sometimes you just have to eat it. You have to eat going down a little bit in your title or salary or progression, because you're in a completely new country and you don't know how to, or you can't access those senior roles at the same level that you would have previously. And that's, for me at least, that was where the side projects became really important. And I could feel like I was still progressing, even if my role had gone back to where it was 2 years ago. And that's really, I think there's a lot of talk now, our generation is very multi-careers, // this many titles. So I think if you are in a circumstance where you've moved to a new country or are switching into another category of career, then, and the only option is, you have to go back 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. Sometimes, yeah, like 𝗂𝗃 was saying, you just need to take those sacrifices, know what your limits are, if you know that it's going to get you to the bigger goal. Or if it's just going to pay the bills. Realistically, that can also be the case sometimes.
True. Now we have about 5 minutes left, so I don't think we have enough time to really throw it open and kind of have people turn on their screens and ask us some questions. So I'm going to ask you both, just kind of to wrap up, what is your number one tip if you're considering a career change? If we haven't already covered it already, what other number one tip can you offer us as we wrap up this session? 𝗂𝗄𝗧.
This is kind of more existential rather than practical, but I think you just have to start doing it, even if it's tiny baby steps in the beginning. You never know what networking event that you go to is going to pay off. You never know what online course that you take is going to be valuable in a few years' time. And if you sit there waiting for the perfect time, for the perfect alignment of the stars, for ticking 5 boxes off to make before you make the change, then as 2020 has proven, the world's going to move on, circumstances are going to change, and you might miss those opportunities. So if you're thinking about it already, start taking steps today.
Great, good tips. And 𝗂𝗃, final tip.
I think what was really essential for me was also the talking to people part at that point, because I also kind of felt very isolated in the industry I was in, and I didn't know many people in Vienna either. So then I really started to force myself to go to networking events and go to, join Austin startups, and through these organizations and people that I had met there, I kind of gained the confidence that it was, there were other things that I could be good at. And I think especially organizations like Female Factor as well, I think this is a great way of meeting people who are working completely different industries, who could share their advice. And a little fun fact, actually Tanya, who's the co-founder of Female Factor, really pushed me into growth hacking as well. Because when I first heard the term growth hacking at one of the Austin Startups meetings, I told her, I was like, I'm not a developer, I can't do it. And she said, no, you told me you want to develop your digital skills. You told me you want to work for a dynamic company. All these things wrapped up. This is growth hacking, Pooja. You should do it. And so through her, I kind of like started, you know, to look into this more. And I realized, okay, no, I'm totally passionate about this. I just didn't know the term. So meeting people, talking to them, and exchanging thoughts is really key. And as Carly said, start today. This is a great day to start, I think.
Really, really amazing tips. And actually, that's a really good point about networking, which kind of leads us to we're just about to take our first break for the afternoon of this conference session, which we are going to encourage everyone to start networking. It's kind of our cloud break. And so we really encourage everyone to hop across to our networking area, which is kind of a bit like a chat roulette networking. Encourage you to kind of reach out to people, send them a message, say hello, post a photo if you can, really get to know everyone. We have a really, really great amount of people joining us today. So this is what our first break of the evening is going to be about. I think it's about 10 minutes or so, or 15 minutes to get chatting. And also, I'm sure Carly and Pooja would be happy if any of you want to follow up with them after this session. You can, again, click on their profile, send them a message, see if they're available for a chat after this. To follow up any of those questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everyone's questions. They were all really, really amazing. So I'm just going to take this moment to thank you both, Carly and Pooja, for your really, really wonderful tips this afternoon. Thank you all much to our participants for submitting some really, really great questions. I hope this has been really insightful for everyone. And yes, I hope you enjoyed the rest of our Female Factor Limitless Mentoring conference. So thank you both.
Thank you.
And with that, we are going to end this session and take a bit of a break. If anyone wants to join me next, I'm going to be talking about how to make it in consulting with our representative from the Boston Consulting Group. But yeah, enjoy networking, everyone. Get to know everyone. We have some great people. Talk to Pooja, talk to Carly, talk to each other. And I wish you all the best with your career changes. Thank you, everyone.